how long can we continue to deny reality? Ask yourself, does the Democratic Party, once heralded as the party of the working class, still exist in that form? Or, like the US dollar, does it persist merely through historical momentum, clinging to relevance that is now highly questionable? You've heard the saying, it's not that I left the Democratic Party, the party left me. That sentiment rings true now more than ever. What we see today is not a party of the common man, but a splintered group, pulled toward extremes, leaving behind any coherent platform.
How dare we speak Merry Christmas? How dare we?
Merry Christmas, everyone. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. Recognizing the importance of dealing with border security, that has never changed. As I said, I know what a crime looks like. And I will tell you, an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
You did raise your hand saying in a debate when asked if border crossing should be decriminalized, but obviously that is not your position.
I never intended, nor will I ever allow America to have a border that is not secure. Because we have a president of the United States who has created a fiction about a crisis at the border, and he has held up the United States government and its workers around his vanity project called a wall.
You're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
This modern Democratic Party has embraced global elitism and open borders, forsaking unity for division. The common sense that once anchored political debate has been discarded, replaced by ever-shifting definitions of reality. Ideology, now Trump's solutions. In Virginia, where I live, the state's sovereignty is under attack from the federal government. Why? Because Virginia wants to ensure fair elections by purging ineligible voters from its rolls. What should be a straightforward move toward election integrity has resulted in a federal lawsuit.
Stunning ruling by a federal judge who is ordering Virginia to reinstate individuals who have self-identified as non-citizens back on the voter rolls.
Is this really what democracy looks like? The open borders policy and the influx of illegal immigrants into swing states isn't just about immigration. It's a calculated maneuver with one clear goal: manipulating elections. The combination of mail-in ballots and unchecked illegal immigration isn't about helping the vulnerable. It's about overwhelming the system and eroding electoral integrity. When chaos becomes the strategy for winning elections, how can we continue to call this democracy? The echoes of the last election still linger. You either accept the results blindly, or you're labeled an election denier, accused of undermining democracy. But the truth is clear. The goal is not to serve the people. It's to keep those in power entrenched, regardless of the public's voice. The modern bureaucrat isn't accountable to the electorate. They serve only a small ruling class that shapes the system in their favor. The will of the people has been buried under bureaucratic maneuvers designed to dilute their power. The strategy is simple: overwhelm the opposition and make it about their refusal to accept your version of democracy. In the democracy of the deep state, elections are no longer about the people choosing their leaders. They're about controlling the process to secure a predetermined outcome. This system isn't faltering by accident. It's being overwhelmed by design. Until we acknowledge this, we are complicit in the erosion of our own democratic voice. Ask yourself, is this chaos truly serving you, or is it benefiting those who want you distracted, divided, and powerless?
You demonize, and then we call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident.
Mail-in voting, illegal voter rolls, and demographic manipulation are key to their version of democracy. They don't trust you to vote in your own best interest because they believe you don't know what that is. Dissenters are isolated and labeled election deniers. If they can convince you that even the most basic biological facts, Like boys being boys and girls being girls are subject to interpretation, why would they trust you with something as important as determining your own future? While you sat quietly, they orchestrated an invasion of your country, all the while assuring you that the border has never been more secure. Now you're being told to embrace other cultures, as your own is slowly erased, marginalized, and vilified. The global elite don't see America as a nation of diverse people united by a common identity. They see it as a nation of fools, easily manipulated by the illusion of democracy.
You have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted.
All of these financial institutions, they buy politicians. You can take this big ton of money, and then you can start to buy people. I work for a company called BlackRock. So it's not who's the president, it's who's controlling the wallet. So it's
And who's that?
The hedge funds, BlackRock, the banks. These guys want campaign financing. Yep, you can buy your candidates. And obviously we have the system in place. First there's the senators, and these guys are cheap. You got 10 grand, you can buy a senator.
With every new redefinition of common sense, you lose control over your life, your rights, and your future. To them, you are simply an election denier, a threat to their vision of democracy as they march forward with their plan to rig the system. Think about it. The more they reshape your understanding of what is normal, the more you surrender without realizing it. These redefinitions aren't just academic. They're tools to strip you of your ability to stand firm in your beliefs. They're counting on your silence, your acceptance that this is just how things are now. But this isn't about embracing diversity. It's about erasing the foundation that makes America what it is. How much longer will you allow yourself to be manipulated before you reclaim your voice, your country, and your future? Make no mistake, this election isn't about legitimate political debate. It's about overwhelming the system to such a degree that proving election fraud becomes an impossible task. You'll be reduced to nothing more than an election denier, a threat to democracy. The result? You surrender your sovereignty, your children's future, and your freedom to a global elite who know better than you do. By the time you realize the extent of the damage, the election will be over. Consider this. They convinced you that an invasion of your country was merely a policy dispute. They led you to believe that mutilating children was an acceptable form of identity affirmation.
Adolescence is hard and puberty is hard. What if you're going through the wrong puberty? What if you inside feel that you are female, but now you're going through a male puberty?
Gender-affirming care is medically necessary, safe, and effective for transgender and non-binary youth and adults.
They insist on the continued use of mail-in ballots, an electoral process so fraught with fraud that many countries have banned it.
If you've got no voter ID and mail-in ballots, how do you prove fraud?
Meanwhile, they use lawfare as a weapon to silence any voice that threatens their narrative. And then there's woke ideology, sold to you as a path to unity. But in reality, it's a tool to divide us further. They've shifted your perception of reality so effectively that actions which once seemed unimaginable are now normalized, all under the guise of progress. But progress for whom? Every step down this path isn't toward unity or equality, it's toward control and division.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
The more they divide us, the easier it is to conquer us. They've turned obvious truths into subjective ideas, forcing you to question your common sense of what democracy even looks like. It's time to step back and ask, are these policies truly benefiting you, your family, or your community? Or are they serving a select few who manipulate the system for their own gain? Think critically about the reality they've painted, and whether it's one you want to accept. This is not democracy. It's manipulation at the highest level. The more you surrender your rights and beliefs, the more power they'll take until you have nothing left. They've already selected a presidential candidate by decree, without any participation from the voters. They scream democracy from the rooftops while vilifying dissent as anti-democratic. What a concept! Accuse others of the very things you do yourself. The more you buy into their con, the emptier your future becomes. If you continue to allow the invasion of your country, the erosion of your values, and the surrender of your rights, you'll wake up one day in a world you no longer recognize. A world where your life is dictated by an elite class that sees you as nothing more than a pawn. Don't be deceived. The Democratic Party you once knew no longer exists. What was once a party of the working class has been overtaken by the global elite, who've transformed it into a vehicle for their agenda. Your vote, which should represent your voice and power, has been reduced to a mere formality in their larger scheme. The promises they make, the narratives they spin, are designed to make you think you have a stake in your future. But the truth is, you're merely a spectator. If you continue to buy into their lies, you are helping them tighten the noose around your own freedoms. The harsh reality is this: they don't serve your interests. They serve theirs. Every redefinition of common sense, every manipulation of truth, is a calculated move to keep you complicit in your own decline. The moment you stop questioning, the moment you accept their version of reality, you surrender your autonomy. It's time to wake up, critique the world around you, and see it for what it really is, not what they tell you. They haven't gone through the trouble of flooding your country with illegal immigrants and solidifying mail-in voting for no reason. Lawfare will be used to silence all dissent once the fog lifts and your world has changed for the worse. Trump, for all his flaws, is a man willing to sacrifice everything for the country he believes in. Right now, he faces the prospect of a staggering 187-year prison sentence, an unprecedented threat hanging over a former president. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris boasts that the Democrats have the resources and expertise to deal with Trump should he challenge the election results. But let's be honest about what that really means. It's not about protecting democracy. It's about leveraging every possible avenue of chaos, whether through the influx of illegal immigrants, the manipulation of mail-in ballots, or holding the threat of imprisonment over a political opponent. The strategy is clear. Trump can either concede voluntarily, or they'll ensure he ends up behind bars. This is what the Democratic Party has become, a party that uses lawfare to silence opposition. As we approach the upcoming election, recent directives and legislative changes under the Harris-Biden administration raise even more concerns. The most controversial of these is the DoD Directive 5240.01, which has sparked intense discussion, especially concerning its language on lethal force.
DoD Directive 5240.01, giving the Pentagon power for the first time in history to use lethal force to kill Americans on U.S. soil who protest government policies.
What are they expecting?
Military officials have downplayed these changes, saying they only clarify when military assistance might involve such force in support of civilian law enforcement. But the public remains skeptical, fearing this directive could open the door to military intervention against citizens. Authorities reassure us that these measures are consistent with existing laws like the Insurrection Act, yet the timing of these updates, so close to a pivotal election, feels anything but reassuring. Social media platforms have erupted with debate, with many interpreting these updates as a dangerous expansion of military power.
Biden-Harris administration has done something 2 weeks ago that has never been done in American history, which is to send lethal force, to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. Technically, now it's legal for the U.S. military under this directive. It will become legal for the U.S. military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protest because they disagree with policies in the White House.
Although officials insist this isn't an unrestricted mandate for military force against civilians, the optics are difficult to ignore. Are we moving toward a future where the military controls rather than protects the people? The mainstream media, of course, will not question these moves. They'll celebrate this narrative, cheering on what they'll frame as a triumph of democracy and the dawn of a new world order. But don't be fooled. What they're really applauding is the slow erosion of democracy, the deliberate dismantling of the principles that once defined our republic. Make no mistake, this isn't about preserving democracy. It's about controlling it, bending it to the will of those in power. And as long as we remain silent, as long as we allow the media to spin these events into a false narrative of triumph, we are complicit in watching the republic slip away.